Your hidden power. Introduction. In my view, there's one crucial quality that sets apart those who succeed from those who don't, a hidden, often untapped trait that many don't even realize they have. I discovered this through my own experiences, which led me to reflect on why we sometimes fall short. Today, I want to share a personal story with you. Who am I? I'm just an ordinary person, without any special merit or virtue that makes me stand out from the crowd. I simply want to share an experience of intellectual awakening that I believe we all have within us. There was a time in my life when I felt like I was stuck in place, trapped by my own doubts and insecurities. I had this sense deep down that I was capable of so much more, like there was a fire inside me that I just couldn't seem to ignite. But every time I tried to make a move toward something bigger, that nagging voice in my head would tell me, "You're not enough." It was as if my potential was hidden behind a thick curtain of fear, and no matter how much I wanted to break through, I didn't know how. Life has a way of making you forget what you're truly capable of, especially when you're faced with one challenge after another. I got caught in that cycle, the daily grind, the pressure to succeed, the fear of failing. It all became so overwhelming that I started to believe maybe that voice was right. Maybe I wasn't destined for anything more than what I had. Doubt became my constant companion, and fear wrapped itself around every decision I made, squeezing tighter each time I tried to step outside my comfort zone. But then, something happened. It wasn't a sudden moment of clarity or a lightning bolt of inspiration. It was more like a quiet realization that crept up on me when I was at my lowest. I remember sitting there feeling completely defeated when I caught a glimpse of something within myself, something that had been there all along. It was like a tiny spark of hope that refused to die out, no matter how much I ignored it. In that moment, I knew that I couldn't keep living as though my potential was out of reach. It wasn't out there, waiting for the right circumstances or the perfect opportunity. It was inside me, buried under all those layers of self-doubt and fear. Slowly, I started to peel back those layers one by one. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I felt like giving up. But every time I faced my fears head-on, I discovered a little more strength, a little more courage. I realized that this journey wasn't just about achieving success. It was about rediscovering who I was at my core. It was about learning to trust that inner voice that I'd silenced for so long, the one that knew I was capable of more. Looking back now, I see that the struggle was never about finding the power to change my life. It was about believing that the power was always within me. And as I continue on this path, I'm more convinced than ever that we all have this hidden force inside us, waiting to be awakened. This is my story of discovering that power, and I hope that by sharing it, you'll start to believe in your own potential too. Because once you tap into that inner strength, there's no limit to what you can achieve. As far back as I can remember, I was chasing a dream, the kind of dream most people have, the hope for success, fulfillment, and a sense of purpose that would make life feel complete. Like so many, I believed the secret to achieving all this was out there, somewhere just beyond my grasp. So I searched. I devoured books, shelves lined with the wisdom of those who had seemingly made it. The stories of self-made millionaires, spiritual gurus, and motivational legends filled my head with hope. Their words made it seem so simple, like there was a formula just waiting for me to discover it. I believed if I followed their steps, my life would transform as magically as theirs had. Then there were the mentors. I looked to them, hoping they'd hand me the missing key, the one I couldn't seem to find on my own. These were people I admired. Successful, confident, radiating the very things I felt I lacked. I was convinced they had answers I couldn't reach on my own. I joined organizations, attended workshops, and surrounded myself with people on the same quest. Each time I thought, this is it. This is where I'll finally figure it out. But as the years passed, something strange began to happen. The more I searched, the more frustrated I became. It was as if with every book I read, with every mentor I followed, the gap between me and what I sought grew wider. Instead of feeling closer to success, I felt lost, adrift in a sea of conflicting advice, half-truths, and fleeting inspiration. I began to question myself, wondering why everyone else seemed to get it while I was left spinning my wheels. Was I doing something wrong, missing something crucial? Why did the answers seem so easy for others, but so elusive for me? That was the hardest part, the growing sense of being lost, not in the world, but in myself. Each new book, each new program, promised to be the magic bullet. And yet, after each one, I found myself back at square one, more confused than before. It wasn't just that the success I craved felt further away, it was that the harder I searched outside myself, the more distant I felt from who I truly was. Looking back, I realized those years weren't wasted. They were part of a journey, but at the time I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running in circles, chasing shadows. It was a profound frustration, the kind that gnaws at you late at night, leaving you wondering if the life you dream of will ever be more than just a dream. There comes a moment when everything you've been holding on to slips through your fingers. For me, that moment wasn't sudden. It crept up on me, piece by piece, until I realized I was standing in the wreckage of what I once believed would be my success story. It wasn't just one thing that brought me to my knees. It was a series of setbacks, each one chipping away at the foundation I thought I'd built. A failed business venture, strained relationships, and financial pressure that felt like a weight on my chest. It all came crashing down at once. The job I had clung to for security suddenly vanished, and with it, my sense of direction. My savings dwindled, and the things I once believed would define my success, career, status, the approval of others, began to unravel. But the real blow wasn't external. It was the deep, unsettling realization that despite all my efforts, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had spent years chasing after an idea of success, following the paths others had laid out for me, and yet here I was, lost and completely disconnected from myself. It was as if I'd been running on autopilot, too afraid to slow down and face the truth, that none of those external achievements had ever filled the emptiness I was trying to escape. There comes a moment when everything you've been holding on to slips through your fingers. For me, that moment wasn't sudden. It crept up on me, piece by piece, until I realized I was standing in the wreckage of what I once believed would be my success story. It wasn't just one thing that brought me to my knees. It was a series of setbacks, each one chipping away at the foundation I thought I'd built. A failed business venture, strained relationships, and financial pressure that felt like a weight on my chest. It all came crashing down at once. The job I had clung to for security suddenly vanished, and with it, my sense of direction. My savings dwindled, and the things I once believed would define my success, career, status, the approval of others, began to unravel. But the real blow wasn't external. It was the deep, unsettling realization that despite all my efforts, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had spent years chasing after an idea of success, following the paths others had laid out for me, and yet here I was, lost and completely disconnected from myself. It was as if I'd been running on autopilot, too afraid to slow down and face the truth, that none of those external achievements had ever filled the emptiness I was trying to escape. Rock bottom isn't just a moment of failure, it's a profound, disorienting silence. Everything around me felt like it was crumbling, but what hurt most was realizing how far I'd drifted from myself. The external chaos was loud, but the internal void was deafening. In that darkness, there were no more books to turn to, no mentors to lean on, and no workshops promising salvation. It was just me and the crushing weight of the unknown. For the first time, I couldn't rely on anyone else's answers. The formulas and shortcuts I had so desperately sought no longer mattered. I was forced to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for years, that everything I'd been searching for outside myself was never going to save me. That was the moment that changed everything. When you're stripped of all the things you thought defined you, you're left with something raw and terrifying, the need to look inward. And so, in the midst of that wreckage, I began to reflect in a way I never had before. There was no more running, no more distractions, just me, facing the one place I had always been afraid to go, within. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But in that emptiness, I discovered something unexpected, a flicker of clarity, a glimpse of truth I'd been too busy to see. Rock bottom didn't destroy me. It forced me to stop looking for answers in the world around me and start searching for the strength, the wisdom, and the purpose that had been inside me all along. I can still remember the night it all shifted. It wasn't anything dramatic. No lightning bolt of inspiration, no grand epiphany delivered in a burst of light. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, like the softest whisper after a storm. I had spent weeks, maybe months, in that strange limbo after hitting rock bottom. Days passed in a blur, but there was something different about this night. The world outside had gone still. The relentless noise of my mind had finally quieted, and for the first time I sat alone with my thoughts, not running from them, not trying to solve them, just sitting. And in that silence, something clicked. It was as if the layers of confusion and frustration, built up over years of searching, finally began to peel away. I don't know what made that night different, but as I sat there staring into the stillness, I felt it. The truth I had been avoiding, hiding from, too scared to face. The answer wasn't out there, it never had been. It had been with me all along. I had spent so long looking for external solutions that I never stopped to think that the source of power, the key to everything I had been searching for, was within me. It wasn't in the books I read or the advice I'd been given. It wasn't in the approval of others or the success I thought would validate my worth. It was in my mind, my beliefs, my thoughts, my inner clarity. In that moment of stillness, I realized something profound. My thoughts had been shaping my life all along, whether I knew it or not. The beliefs I held about myself, the world, and what I was capable of had been guiding every step of my journey, leading me down paths of doubt, fear, and uncertainty, because that's what I believed to be true. I had been living in a prison of my own making, locked inside a mindset that told me I wasn't enough, that I needed something outside of myself to be whole. But as I sat there, bathed in the silence, I began to understand the power of my mind, the power I had ignored, dismissed, and underestimated. The mind wasn't just a tool, it was the source of everything. It was the creator of my reality, the architect of my experiences. I had spent years giving that power away, trusting others to show me the way, when all along, the way had been inside me. This wasn't just a feel-good realization. It was a truth so raw, so undeniable, that I couldn't turn away from it anymore. For the first time in my life, I saw clearly how my thoughts, my beliefs, and my inner world had been shaping my outer reality. And with that realization came something unexpected, the power to change it all. I didn't need to find the answers anymore because they were already within me. The clarity I had been chasing came not from some external source, but from tapping into the wisdom, the intuition, and the belief that had always been there, waiting for me to listen. That night, sitting alone in the quiet, I realized that I was no longer searching. For the first time, I wasn't looking for answers outside myself. I was discovering the power that had been within me all along. And with that discovery came a freedom I had never known before. The freedom to create my life, not from a place of fear or lack, but from the deep, unshakable truth that my mind, my thoughts, and my beliefs held the key to everything I had ever wanted. Once I grasped the truth about the mind's power, everything began to shift. It wasn't a sudden magical transformation, but a slow awakening to a force I had never fully understood before. Belief. Not the shallow kind, where you simply wish for something to happen, but the deep, unshakable conviction that comes from knowing without a doubt that you are capable of more than you ever imagined. I started to look back at history, at people who had shaped the world, not because they had more resources or advantages than others, but because they believed in their vision with such intensity that nothing could stand in their way. People like Napoleon Bonaparte, who was underestimated because of his origins and his stature, never let that stop him. Despite what others said about him, he never backed down. His conviction that he was destined for greatness made him stand out. He didn't wait for permission or validation from others. He created his reality because he believed it was possible. In fact, anyone has that same power if they believe in themselves and let go of internal judgments and the need for others' approval. Anyone who truly believes in themselves is destined to achieve great things in life. That same principle began to take root in my own life. I realized that belief is more than just a mental concept. It's a force of creation. What you believe shapes your reality. If you believe you are limited, that life is happening to you instead of for you, then that's exactly what you'll experience. But if you believe in your own power, in your ability to manifest your desires, then the world starts to shift in response. It's not magic. It's an innate power we all possess. The ability to believe in ourselves and our capabilities. Self-belief opens the door to incredible opportunities. I once saw this in action with a salesperson, but I never fully appreciated it until now. A successful salesperson doesn't just sell a product. They have to believe in it wholeheartedly. They have to be convinced that what they're offering is worth buying. The moment they show even the slightest doubt, failure is almost guaranteed. And this principle doesn't just apply to sales, it holds true in every aspect of life. For the first time, I began to experiment with this newfound understanding. Instead of focusing on what I didn't have, I focused on what I could create. I started small, testing the waters of my belief. I would set an intention, something that aligned with the life I truly wanted, and I would hold that belief with unwavering certainty, not with desperation or fear, but with calm assurance. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. The more I believed in myself, the more opportunities seemed to arise out of nowhere. People appeared in my life who could help me move forward. Doors opened where I once saw only walls. It was as if the universe itself had been waiting for me to realize my own power. And now that I had, it responded in kind. I'm not saying it was easy. There were moments when doubt crept in, whispering that I was being foolish, that the setbacks I had faced before would surely return. But each time I reminded myself that doubt is just a reflection of past conditioning. The true power lies in belief, steady, unwavering belief. As I continued on this path, I realized that this power wasn't about controlling outcomes or forcing things to happen. It was about aligning with a deeper truth, the truth that I was always in control of my destiny, that my thoughts, my beliefs, were shaping my future with every passing moment. It wasn't about wishing for success. It was about knowing that success was inevitable because I believed it to be so. With this realization, I began to let go of the fear that had held me back for so long. I no longer saw myself as a victim of circumstance, but as the creator of my own life. I no longer needed external validation or permission to pursue my dreams. The power of belief had ignited something within me, an inner flame that guided my every step. As I embraced this power, I began to manifest my desires in ways I had never thought possible. Projects that once seemed impossible began to take shape effortlessly. Relationships that had been strained started to heal. Financial opportunities arose that I hadn't even been looking for. It wasn't luck. It was belief, pure and simple. The world I once feared was no longer a source of anxiety or limitation. It became a canvas, and I, the artist, with the power to create anything I chose to believe in. This wasn't some abstract philosophy. It was real, tangible, and transformative. I had regained control of my destiny, not by finding some external secret, but by tapping into the power that had been inside me all along, the power of belief. In that moment, I knew that nothing could hold me back anymore. The world had opened up, not because it had changed, but because I had. My mind had become my greatest ally, and with it, I would create the life I had always dreamed of. As I stepped into this new phase of my journey, I felt a strange pull. Something inside me whispered that I already had all the answers I was searching for. It wasn't in some external accomplishment or another person's approval. The answers were within me. It was time to start listening to my own inner wisdom, but I'll be honest, I had no idea how to do that. I'd heard about techniques like visualization, affirmations, and cultivating self-awareness, but they felt like abstract ideas. not practical tools for daily life. However, I decided to give them a shot. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. All these techniques can be incredibly helpful, but they're useless if you don't truly believe in your own potential. Without that belief, they'll only be a waste of time. For example, you could spend all your time visualizing a new house and hoping the opportunity will just appear. Maybe it will, but more likely it won't, and you'll end up feeling discouraged. That's not how things work. If you want a new house, you need to start with the basics, small achievements that build toward a bigger goal. These small wins reinforce your belief that you're on the right path, that what you want is possible, and with each step your confidence grows. The most surprising thing is how this process shifts your entire perspective, making you see new possibilities and believe in yourself even more. Affirmations are incredibly powerful, though for the longest time I practiced them without even realizing it, and in a negative way, through my internal dialogue. It may sound strange, but it's how I see things. Every time a negative thought, idea, or word repeatedly crosses your mind, it seeps into your subconscious like an unconscious form of self-sabotage. You're essentially programming yourself for failure without even knowing it. When I recognized this pattern, I made a conscious effort to distance myself from any source of negativity that could undermine my progress. And when those negative thoughts do pop up, the key is to catch them and replace them with empowering beliefs, thoughts of self-mastery and strength, refusing to be swayed by external noise. I don't want to overanalyze or try to explain the mechanics behind this process, but I can tell you one thing for sure. Once words or ideas take root within you, they're incredibly hard to shake. That's why it's crucial to fill your mind with positive, empowering thoughts, because they truly shape your reality. It's just as important to avoid sources of negativity, like bad news, people with toxic energy, and even blaring, chaotic music. Through these practices, I started to see my inner wisdom unfold in unexpected ways. I realized that I didn't need to wait for permission to pursue my dreams. The clarity and confidence I'd been searching for were inside me all along. Visualization, affirmations, and self-awareness weren't just practices. They were pathways to the life I'd always wanted, but had been too scared to believe I deserved. So, if you're reading this and wondering whether you too have this wisdom within you, the answer is yes. Start small, just as I did. Take a few minutes each day to picture the life you want, speak words that uplift you, and observe your own thoughts without judgment. With time, you'll notice a shift, an alignment of your subconscious mind with your conscious desires. And trust me, once that alignment takes root, you'll be unstoppable. If there was one thing I learned early on in my journey, it's this. Fear and doubt are relentless. Just when I'd start to feel a sense of progress, they'd creep back in, whispering reasons why I wasn't good enough, why my dreams were too big, why I'd never succeed. I'd wake up some mornings feeling paralyzed, questioning every step I'd taken, but now, with a bit more self-awareness, I began to see fear and doubt for what they were, protective mechanisms, not truths. They were there to keep me safe, to stop me from taking risks, but I also knew that if I listened to them, I'd never get anywhere. So I decided to confront these feelings head-on. I remember one morning, sitting down and breathing deeply, allowing my fears to surface. I'd been avoiding them for so long, but now I wanted to face them. I sat quietly, with my eyes closed, acknowledging each fear as it arose. I felt the tension in my body and the rapid beating of my heart, but I stayed with it. Slowly I started asking myself questions. Why am I afraid of this? What's the worst that could happen? And if it did happen, could I survive it? The answer was always yes. Meditation became my go-to tool for quieting those anxious thoughts. I'd sit in silence, focusing on my breath, letting each inhale and exhale guide me back to the present. Some days, I'd imagine myself surrounded by a warm, comforting light, a reminder that I was safe. The more I meditated, the more I realized that fear was just a thought, a story I was telling myself, and if it was just a story, I had the power to rewrite it. But meditation was only the beginning. I also started trusting my intuition, a part of me that I'd ignored for too long. I realized that deep down, I often knew what I needed to do, but I'd buried those instincts under layers of doubt. To reconnect with my intuition, I began asking myself simple questions throughout the day. What do I truly want in this moment? Does this choice feel right? At first, I doubted the answers I got, but I pushed myself to follow them even when it felt uncomfortable. And you know what? My intuition was rarely wrong. Letting go of fear wasn't a one-time event, it was a daily practice. Each time fear surfaced, I'd remind myself that it didn't control me. I'd acknowledge it, breathe through it, and then make a conscious decision to act anyway. It wasn't easy, but it was empowering. With every small victory, I felt myself growing stronger, more confident. If you're reading this and struggling with your own fears, I encourage you to meet them with compassion. Don't run from them. Sit with them, breathe through them, and question them. Trust that you already have the wisdom and strength to handle whatever comes your way. Start meditating, even if it's just for a few minutes each day. Listen to that quiet voice within you. It's there, waiting to guide you. The more you practice, the more you'll find that fear and doubt no longer have the power to hold you back. You'll begin to trust yourself, to take bold steps, and to live a life guided by your own inner truth. The journey to overcoming fear isn't always straightforward, but every step you take brings you closer to the person you're meant to be. And once you've tasted that freedom, there's no going back. As I look back on my journey, I can't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not because I've arrived at some final destination, but because I've discovered something I never knew I had, a deep, unwavering power within myself. And here's the thing, I'm not special. This inner power isn't unique to me. It's something we all possess, even if we don't always see it. I spent years searching for answers outside of myself, hoping that someone else held the key to my happiness, waiting for the right opportunity to appear or for some magical solution to solve all my problems. But none of that came. Instead, what I found was even better. The realization that I already had everything I needed to create a life I love. And so do you. If you're reading this, I want you to know that the same potential is sitting quietly inside you, waiting for you to acknowledge it. You don't need anyone's permission, validation, or approval to start living the life you truly want. It's time to stop looking outward for solutions and start believing in your own power. Trust me, the journey may be challenging, but every step you take will reveal a piece of who you truly are. The path to self-realization is filled with courage, self-belief, and perseverance. It requires you to let go of the limiting beliefs you've carried for far too long, to quiet the voice of fear, and to keep moving forward even when doubt tries to hold you back. But it's a path worth taking, one that can lead you to a life of purpose, fulfillment, and possibilities you may not yet be able to imagine. So here's my call to action for you. Start today. Take one small step toward that thing you've always wanted to do. Trust your intuition, practice self-awareness, let go of what no longer serves you, and make space for the things that bring you joy. Embrace the journey, with all its twists and turns, because it's leading you to a place where you'll finally understand that you are enough, you are capable, and you are worthy of the life you've always dreamed of. Your inner power is waiting for you. All you have to do is believe.